Good morning, class. This is Mr. Novinsky. Hopefully by this time you've already passed in your assignments. You've already graded them. Hopefully you did well on this. If not, you guys do need to avail yourself of either having a tutor before or after school, coming in for extra help, talking to any of the math teachers that are in this hallway. They all know how all these concepts work. Additionally, you could see Mrs. Gant after school. She tutors after school. There's also this video will appear online for you to check out. There's also an online tutor if you just guys go to the blog. Should be a pretty simple concept. Just say you're part of Algebra 1, and you're working on Algebra 1 concepts, and you'll be fine. On Tuesday, when you guys return, you will have a quiz or maybe a test over the concepts that we've talked about this whole week. Anything from writing the equations of lines in slope-intercept form, standard form, point-slope form, dealing with parallel and perpendicular lines, which is what we're going to talk about today, as well as graphing each of those, being able to graph lines that are either in point-slope form, slope-intercept form, standard form, or what we're going to do today, dealing with parallel and perpendicular lines. So when you're done with today's lesson, if you finish the assignment in class, which I anticipate some of you will, I do hope that you'll take some time to memorize each of the equations. I will not provide them for you, but I need you guys to work hard so that you guys can take and be successful on your quiz or test when you return. Today we're talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. It says that lines that are blank have the same slope. So same slope would be like if one line's slope is 3, well, the other one's slope will also have to be 3. And these are actually parallel lines. I do expect that you guys are taking notes today. By the time if I had the sub go around and look at your notes, you should have everything filled in that I have filled in as well. Lines that are blank have opposite reciprocal slopes. What that means to me is that if a slope was 7/3, then the other slope would turn out to be 3/7. That would be the reciprocal. And opposite, since this one was positive, this next one will be negative. Opposite reciprocal slopes, those are perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines. Another example of this, which is maybe a little bit more difficult, is if you have a slope of 2. Generally speaking, when you flip 2 over, 2 is technically 2 over 1. So when you flip it over, that would be 1/2. When you change the sign, this was positive, this becomes negative. There's also a little bit of notation that I want to show you with this, is that if this starts off as just m as our regular slope, this usually is called our perpendicular slope. What we do is we draw the perpendicular symbol, which is an upside down capital T, sort of as instead of like an exponent, as sort of a sub-note beneath the M, just kind of to the side and to the right of it. I think you guys have seen me do this several times. What we're going to work on today is we're going to end up working on writing the equation of lines that are parallel or perpendicular of lines, and we'll end up putting them in point-slope form using point-slope. At the very end, we will again put them, just like yesterday, putting them in slope-intercept form. So what we need to do first is we need to determine the slope. Sometimes it'll be given to us in the equation, and we'll realize that what it is because it's parallel will be the same slope. Other times we'll have to identify because the lines are perpendicular, and we'll have to use the opposite reciprocal slope. We'll insert this stuff into the point-slope form equation as we did yesterday, and we'll simplify until we get it into slope-intercept form. Very similar to what we did yesterday, just one extra step. So for the example, it says write the equation as indicated. It's going to be some line that's going to be parallel to this line right here, and it goes through this random point. Okay, so graphically it'll be parallel. Parallel means that it'll have the exact same slope. So as we fill out the chart below here, it says that what is the current slope. You look right here, don't say it's negative 5x, but say that m equals just negative 5. A lot of people will say negative 5x. Truly the slope is just m equals negative 5. Since it is parallel, they'll have the exact same slope when we work on this. On this other side, what we're going to do with this is now we're going to insert this information into the point-slope form because we're given a point, and now we're given our new slope, which is the same slope. We'll actually insert this into point-slope form. Identify this as our x here. This will be our y1, x1 and y1. So when we substitute, we would get y minus 4 equals our slope, which is negative 5, and x minus a negative 1, which would be x plus 1. We'll distribute the negative 5, so we'll have y minus 4 equals negative 5x minus 5. That's just distributing the negative 5 through the parentheses. Finally, we'll add 4 to both sides. That'll give us y equals negative 5x minus 1. We'll put a box around this to say that we're done. We can always check our answers just a little bit by looking through it and saying, okay, well, we do have the exact same slope. And generally speaking, you can't really check to see if you have the correct y-intercept. But at least you're half right on it. Okay. Number 2, it's pretty similar to this. It says a line that's parallel to this point, to this line, and it goes through this point. So we'll identify the slope. The slope is not negative x. Instead, it's just the coefficient. It's negative 1. We should probably say m equals negative 1. The new slope, since this is parallel, is going to be the exact same slope, so m equals negative 1. We'll again go through and we'll plug this information, this x1 and our y1, into, as well as our new slope, into point slope form. So that's y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Again, this is something you'll have to memorize for your test or quiz that's on Monday. This will be y plus 4. Since it was negative, we'll make it positive. This will be negative 1 times x minus 4. We'll distribute the negative 1. That'll be y plus 4 equals negative x plus 4. And then at the very end, we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. And we'll get kind of an interesting answer here. It'll just be y equals negative x. The positive 4 and the negative 4 will end up canceling each other out, and we'll just have y equals negative x. And if you look, our x's and y's are always going to be opposite points, because whatever x is, y is going to be the opposite of it. So if I say one point's 2, the other point has to be negative 2. If one point is 6, the other point has to be negative 6. If one point's negative 14, the other part of the point has to be positive 14. Your x and y coordinates are always going to be opposites of each other when you have the line y equals negative x. The next examples all use the word perpendicular. You're finding a line that's perpendicular to each of these. And sometimes they write these a little funny. They'll actually write out the fraction, and it'll look kind of strange. This just means that the slope is negative 1/2. And this one down here, this is just going to be negative 2/3. Just so you can tell, it's kind of weird just because it was written using a computer that didn't stack things, which is fine. It works out just fine. We'll again identify our slope in this first one. Our slope is negative 1/2. Since we're working on a perpendicular line, our perpendicular slope, that's how you pronounce it, you would end up flipping this, which would end up being 2/1, and we'll change it to become positive. Probably the best way to write that is just to write it as 2. Again, what we'll do is we'll work on this formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We'll substitute in, this is our x1, this is our y1. This would be y plus 5 equals a slope of 2 times x minus 3. We'll distribute the 2 at this point. So we'll have y plus 5 equals 2x minus 6. We'll subtract 5 from both sides. We'll have y equals 2x minus 11. Okay? Again, this is going to be a line that's perpendicular to it, so it should have the opposite reciprocal slope. We use this 2, and we use this point here. Notice that neither 3 or negative 5 show up in our final answer. A lot of people try to just sneak those in if they don't really remember the process. They'll just try to write those numbers down, and that never gets you the right answer. For number 4, we identify our current slope. Again, our current slope here is going to be m equals negative 4. The opposite reciprocal slope, since it's perpendicular, we're going to have to flip over negative 4. So that'd be 1/4 negative. And since it is negative, we need to have the opposite, so it's going to be positive. We can just write that as positive 1/4, or just 1/4. This is going to be x1 and y1. So again, we write out the formula, y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Maybe I'm writing a little bit smaller than you. If you can find some room to write this down, I think this would be useful for you. Again, take notes. This would be 1/4 x minus 5. This y minus 0 just becomes y on the left side. And when we distribute the 1/4, this would be 1/4 x minus 5/4. The way I got 5/4 is when I multiply this by 5 is the same as multiplying by 5 over 1. You just multiply across, so 1 times 5 gives us 5. 4 times 1 just gives us 4. And there's no way I can simplify 5/4 except for making a mixed number, which is something that you would do in middle school. We'll just leave these as you called in middle school, improper fractions. I think it's totally fine to leave it this way. In fact, I would encourage this to be your final answer. Okay, the last one, let me move this out of the way before we get started on our last one. It tells us our slope again. We'll just have that identified. Our current slope here is m equals negative 2/3. Our opposite reciprocal slope, since this is perpendicular, is going to be the opposite reciprocal. So opposite would be positive. The reciprocal would be 3/2. Again, this is x1, this is y1. I'll use the formula. Y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Again, it's a really good idea to have that memorized for our quiz next week, as well as the other equations that we used. Since this says y minus a negative 2, I'll just say y plus 2. Our slope is 3/2. This would be x, instead of saying minus a negative 6, we'll actually say plus 6. We'll distribute the 2/3, I'm sorry, the 3/2. So I'll say 3 times x is 3x divided by 2. I'll do the same thing with the 6. 3 times 6 is 18 divided by 2. And I can simplify this just a little tiny bit by making this y plus 2 equals, and maybe we could write this not really as the fraction, or just as the fraction standing out in front. This would be plus 9. My final step would be to subtract 2 from both sides. I really don't have room to write this down here, but I'll subtract 2 from both sides, and this would be x, 3/2 x plus 7 if I subtract 2. I do have maybe a little bit of room to write it. I'll write it right there. Again, you guys do have a quiz or a test when you get back on Tuesday. These are all the notes that we have. Make sure to realize what happens when you have parallel lines, what happens when you have perpendicular lines. I do want you guys to be seated and quietly working, almost silently working on your assignments. I've given your substitute permission to do whatever she needs to in order to get you guys to work on this. You guys do have an assignment that's going to be 1 through 12. If you choose to try working it out on the front, that's fine. It's going to be really, really tight to identify all the information. So maybe think about working on it on the back of the sheet that it's going to be handed out, or possibly just working on loose leaf paper, and when you turn it in tomorrow, just staple it, or on Tuesday of next week, just end up stapling it to the back. Again, you guys do have a test or a quiz when you get back over all the elements of algebra that we've reviewed over the last couple of days. If you need help on what they are, help remembering what they are all on the blog, which you guys know how to access through the school's webpage. Guys, please have a safe, legal, and moral weekend.